Yep, as you can tell from the skyline, we're back in London, leaving the cold winds and snow of New York to you fancy Americans. That doesn't mean we haven't got a bevy of tech news for you this week, with a look back at the past decade, what's worked, what hasn't, and what the future holds. Stay tuned. And so to the technologies of Christmas past. Over the last 10 years, there's been lots of companies, lots of devices, lots of manufacturers, and lots of technologies that have tried to impress us and impress our gadget minds, but to be honest, have just failed and failed badly. Of all the technologies that failed in the last 10 years, we're surprised that Teletext managed to last on so long. The love affair with Mode 7 was clearly too strong for it to give up the ghost until the final moments of 2009. Why would it be dead? Well, the internet, have you heard of it? You're on it, it's interesting, and to be honest, we can't see why the internet didn't crush it any earlier. Meanwhile, the middle of the decade was pretty much commandeered or commanded by the spat between Sony's Blu-ray format and Toshiba's HD-DVD offering. Both managed to launch to consumers, both managed to confuse the hell out of consumers, and in the end, it was all too much, with Sony's Blu-ray coming out the winner. Unfortunately, the HD-DVD was cast to the gravestone of failed technologies, along with Betamax and other home entertainment devices, and Toshiba finally put the nail in the coffin when at the final end of 2009 it launched its own Blu-ray player, something that it said it would never do until hell froze over. With 16 years of gaming heritage in the home and a brand new spanking console, anybody who at the turn of the millennium thought that the Sega with its Dreamcast would be, well, non-existent by the end of it, probably was Nostradamus himself. Interestingly, after all the success of the Mega Drive, of the Game Gear, of the Genesis, of the Dreamcast itself, Sega decided in 2002 in the UK to call it quits and pull out, having been beaten up by yet again Sony and Nintendo. In fact, all it is now is a software house trying to pump out more Sonic the Hedgehogs than you can possibly handle. That was the past. Let's see what's happening in the present. Think Millennium Eve. Think how many pictures you took and then how long you had to wait for those pictures to come back. Fast forward 10 years and the digital camera has come a long way, with the standard now being 12 megapixels. Back then it wasn't even 1 or 2. And digital SLR cameras finally coming to the consumer market, thanks to Canon in 2003. It's meant that photography, certainly digital photography, has exploded. Thousands of websites and thousands of creativity options available to you, with new digital cameras coming out every day. In fact, the future necessarily holds even more exciting features. Just think, when in the year 2000 was your camera able to work out whether you were smiling, blinking, or not even looking at the camera at all? The possibilities, it now seems, are endless. At the turn of the century, when it came to buying music, you nipped down to Woolies to buy your CD single. The trouble is, now in 2009, almost 2010, neither Woolies or the CD single is around, and that's because we've all gone digital. And who do we have to thank for that? Well, although they weren't the first, Apple and its iPod is the main culprit of the digital music success story. Of course, things are changing at a fast pace. You have services like Spotify in the UK, Pandora in the US, meaning that you can access music and not even have to pay for it. But it all came down to a very clunky, very odd-looking iPod. And guess what? When it launched, iTunes and the ability to even manage your music, or let alone buy it online, wasn't even around. At the beginning of the noughties, if I was to tell you to get lost, there's a good possibility that you probably would get lost, because it would be quite easy to do. Map reading skills or arguments of which way to go around the M25 aside, we didn't have GPS. Roll forward, or should I say drive forward, 10 years, and all of a sudden you've got GPS coming out of our ears, coming out of our bottoms, coming out of everywhere, because let's face it, most devices, from mobile phones to even cameras I've seen, and of course dedicated GPS devices, have the ability to tell you where you are, where you're going, and where you should go next. It's great, it's brilliant, it's saved a number of arguments. The only trouble is occasionally, as the Daily Mail loves to remind us, people are still stupid enough to follow the instructions into a lake. So that was the technology of Christmas present. What about the technology of Christmas future? and to Christmas future. What are the technologies that we're going to be seeing over the next decade, and which ones are going to make an impact? Well, to be honest, we've started seeing technologies that we're going to get used to using over the next 10 years already. Augmented reality is one of those, but while at the moment it's stuck within a phone, if you don't know what augmented reality is where you take a video camera feed and then you overlay it with information, like where certain buildings are or certain information, and then that obviously gives you like a heads-up display. Now, where I think we'll see this is out of the phone, but we'll see it in sports. So people like golfers or American footballers will start to use it to work out distances, wind speeds, etc., etc. Or alternatively, we'll start to see it in the car. Imagine instead of a GPS unit giving you where speed camera and useful information is, that the entire windscreen was acting as a massive feed to show you what was going on. Many technology bigwigs believe that 3D is going to finally see not only the light, but also a massive impact in the way that we watch television over the next 10 years. To be honest, I'm not so sure. For the moment, the technology is still very in its early stages. In addition to that, I can't see my granny wearing a pair of glasses on Christmas Day to watch the latest blockbuster movie. Until that happens, until a format is decided and a way forward is approached, I think that 3D TV is still going to be very much something for the demo rooms rather than your living room. Batteries are pretty useless, aren't they? I mean, look at your mobile phone, for example. I bet it can't even get a day's worth of battery without you needing to recharge it. The good news is, it's just like a good cup of coffee. All that's about to change with the ability to have batteries recharge faster, batteries to hold use longer, and even necessarily the need to have batteries at all in the next 10 years. You've got fuel cells being developed at the moment, which will obviously last considerably longer from a battery life perspective. And then Intel have already demoed wireless power. Imagine walking into a room and all your gadgets, your laptops, your phone, your camera, what have you, automatically start charging as soon as you're there. Sounds impressive, and it could be possible by the year 2020. Well, that's it for this week's show. Hope you've enjoyed it. Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. We'll see you in 2010.